short forms of the game, and he talked about the relentless schedule, which is not new, but as you near the end of your time in the job, have you come to any conclusions how that can be eased, or how you can ensure that the best players and the biggest entertainers, play all forms of the game, whether it's an IPL window or have you come to any conclusions about that?
The answer is simple, but we can't do it. There's only 365 days in the year. If I could work out to get more, we would have had the answer. You're right, Chloe. Volume of cricket is something which we all focus on. We often talk about it. James referred to the recent ICC Cricket Committee meeting. Again, we looked at the statistics. We looked at all of the detail around it. The only way, in my view, is for everybody involved to monitor and to ensure that they manage volume. And everybody, to me, is from the players themselves all the way through to the administrators, including the coaches in between. We've just seen last week in the Test match where England and Andy Flower and Andy Strauss in particular were resting James Anderson. Now, rotation is something which I think certain players are not keen on, understandably so, but I think it's a reality. And unless all of us, as I say, manage the volume, we're not going to get on top of that.
Haroon, just in terms of the ICC window again, the IPL window, sorry, New Zealand have to play England next year in the Test series while the IPL is on. Now, for a country like New Zealand, who perhaps there's not as much money in cricket as there is in some other countries, is there a role for the ICC to try to help avoid those sort of conflicts?
Well, the challenge starts with the scheduling between New Zealand and England being a bilateral arrangement. So those dates and those fixturing is managed by those two particular countries. The ICC would only provide some guidelines in respect to the FTP, number of matches and so on, but the actual scheduling is done by those two countries. And my understanding is that New Zealand is well aware of the IPL. They've got an arrangement with their players. They take that into account, they factor it in. But often we talk about, and you made reference, both of you, to a window for the IPL. The consequence of that is, what do we do with the Big Bash League? What do we do with other Premier Leagues? Sri Lanka is launching one, Bangladesh has got one. And I know people might say that the IPL is the Premier League. But once you provide a window for one particular member, you've got to be conscious of the fact that you may well have to do it for other members. And hence why we've not been supportive of a window specifically for any one of those domestic leagues. So the scheduling comes down to the bilateral arrangements that members make amongst themselves.
Well, I think there's a notional window already for the IPL. I think it exists. There's an inevitability around some overlap, and countries are working around that to the best of their ability. There are challenges. Ultimately, there's been raised with clashes from time to time, but I think there's a notional window that most countries are working with and around in order to allow their players the opportunity to play in IPL. It's a wonderful opportunity for cricketers to play in that competition. It's a huge competition, and obviously it's very lucrative as well. It's hard to really stand in the way of that, particularly for countries that are less fortunate than ourselves, perhaps not generating the same amount of money as we are, and not being able to pay their players as much as we are able to here in Australia.
Haroon, just being devil's advocate, have you contemplated the World 2020 without Australia if the MOU agreement can't be reached?
I often avoid speculative questions. I'm confident that in time to come, James and the Players Associations will work out an arrangement. That's a reality. We always have these tensions that develop. But I don't want to speculate on something which may never happen.
Haroon, in regards to the DRS, are we any closer to a general consensus through the cricket community about using DRS? Or are we getting into a situation where the ICC will need to make a choice as to whether to dump DRS totally or get everyone to conform? Are we any closer to a decision there?
Well, the Cricket Committee a couple of weeks back debated the issue again, and they made a recommendation which is not different to last year, that they believe that DRS should be applied universally. They're comfortable having just received reports on independent assessments we made on the reliability of ball tracking. Those reports have not yet been presented to the Chief Executives Committee or the board, which happens later this month. So I believe that as we use DRS more and the technology improves, we should be able to convince those that were initially skeptical. And there was good reason why some people were not confident with the application of the technology. But I think, like all technology, with time it improves. We've seen recently newer versions of hotspot cameras being used, and they're certainly better than what the previous models were. So I think in time to come, and I'm still a supporter of using technology, I think most of the players have come to terms and adapted themselves and become familiar with the application of the review system. So I think in due course we should see ourselves moving closer towards acceptance by most people.
Does the cricket committee put a time limit on this? I mean, it would seem it seems ridiculous that we have half the cricket community saying yes we will and half saying no we won't. Is there a point in time where we need to say everyone needs to comply?
Well, I've got a theory that goes in even further away from everybody complying. I think we should allow the teams that want to use it, even if it's in one match. So the batting side who wants to use it must use it. But that's just a throwaway line.
So
I think it makes sense for there to be universal application. But the fact of the matter is the decision currently is for both teams to agree to use it. And whilst we're in this period of pioneering the technology and bringing it into play, I think it served its purpose. I hope that in due course and sooner rather than later, we go along with the Cricket Committee's recommendation, which is to apply it across every match.
James, there were some reports from Pakistan last week that they were keen for Australia's series against Pakistan coming up to be 5 2020s. And there were also reports that the ICC said that's not allowed for a 2020 series to be that long. Are you aware of Pakistan proposing anything along those lines?
Well, I know Pakistan have had some issues with determining a venue for the series, and part of that perhaps relates to weather issues and challenges with heat if it is played, if it happens to be played in the UAE. And it makes sense to, as a follow-up to that, if the matches are to be played there, then in order to avoid the heat, you reduce the number of one-day internationals you play when you play 2020. So there hasn't been any formal discussion. Don't tell Haroon that we haven't had any formal discussions about that, but at some stage it may well be that we need to talk to the ICC about that. There is good reason why the ICC has decided that only a limited number of 2020 matches can be played in one particular series, but in the first instance it's up to Pakistan to determine the format of the series that they think is going to work out. They need a venue first and work through that, and there may well be then we put a formal proposition to the ICC that in exceptional circumstances that it might be an option that they look favourably upon.
Haroon, is there any leeway, particularly in a World 2020 year, for extended 2020 series?
Well, you might remember in a World 2020 year we've already agreed to extend the 12 maximum to 15. So in this particular year, any member can play 15 T20 internationals.
George, would you like to play more T20 internationals for the World Cup?
It would certainly be nice to play a couple, if nothing else than just to settle a team and to really settle down on a lineup. But I guess I've got no doubt that whether they're scheduled or not, once we get over to Sri Lanka and actually prepare, then the preparation will be fine.
Thank you.